Morytania stonks are going to the moon. So with today's announcement, Jagex made it possible so that combo items that needed multiple regions will just need one region for it to drop. So for example, the Echo boots from Colosseum were almost impossible to make because you needed the Bandos boots from Asgarnia, then the Tourmaline core from Grotesque Guardians in Morytania, then the Echo Crystal from the Colosseum in Varlamore. But now the Echo boots will just straight up drop from the Colosseum. And even Guardian boots will just straight up drop in Morytania. I saw this Reddit post yesterday. First off, it looks sick. He made himself have the Echo boots and the new spear. And you look closely, he has the new amulet and ring from Fremennik. But of course, someone was quick to point out, hey, for the Echo boots, you'd have to have Varlamore, Asgarnia, and Morty, meaning you can't get the Fremennik jewelry. So now this guy's dreams can come true, and he can have this amazing drip with these shiny rings. But so let's get into each region and talk about the implications. Starting with the short one, Tirannwyn. So Zulrah will drop a upgraded Trident of the Swamp. So suddenly Tirannwyn is looking really good. You'll get a Blade of Saildor from Gauntlet, a Bofa from Gauntlet, and the Crystal Armor will buff both of those, and then a Trident of the Swamp from Zulrah. So suddenly Tirannwyn is looking really clean. I think I'm probably going to choose it. My regions right now I'm thinking are Tirannwyn, Morytania, and Varlamore. I'll talk more about that later though. So Kandarin, one of the few things it had going for it was that it had a trident, and now you don't even need to take that for it. So Kandarin is 100% in the bin right now. They just keep losing. So even Mod Arcane posted in the league's Discord this picture of beating a dead cow with the words, "Die, Kandarin, die." So I'm pretty sure the J-mods are like cooking up something for Kandarin, because it just seems like with every reveal, Kandarin becomes more and more worthless. Even in the video, it purposely called out Kandarin and showing the person that didn't have to choose Kandarin chuckling at the noobs who did choose Kandarin. So all this kind of makes me feel like Jagex is just cooking something up to use for Kandarin. For Asgarnia, the biggest one I think was that Cerberus will just straight up drop the Eternal boots instead of the Eternal Crystal. The other crystals you will still have to make, so you need Ranger boots from Clues, as well as Dragon boots from Spiritual Creatures. Since you have Asgarnia unlocked, you can kill the Spiritual Creatures in the God Wars dungeon, so that kind of makes sense. And then the Desert Treasure 2 bosses will all drop the rings straight up, and I think that's one of the biggest things, knocking Fremennik down a peg, perhaps. And don't get me wrong, the Fremennik jewelry is still incredibly strong, especially because it uses all three. So in Asgarnia, you can of course get the whole Soul Reaper Axe from the Whisperer, and you can also now get the Bellator ring. The ring is good because it has some slash, but it's probably one of the more useless ones in the league specifically, just because it only gives a little bit of melee bonus, and the slash accuracy isn't that important when the relics usually make us extremely accurate. The biggest issue is killing Whisperer uses magic. I don't think you'll be able to really melee her very often because she smacks if you get into melee range. So it feels weird to get a melee ring if you're killing her with mage. So we'll see if anyone really finds any use in trying to go for this ring. So Varlamore, probably one of my favorite changes, is now you can get the Ultor ring off of Ardorvis. This makes Varlamore easily one of my favorite picks. In addition to the Ultor ring, you can get, of course, the Soul Reaper Axe from Vardorvis, and you can get the Echo Boots off the Colosseum. But getting the Ultor, and then we'll talk about later the Rancor from Morytania, means that melee doesn't really need to go Fremennik for the jewelry anymore, because the Ultor ring is only 3 strength worse than the Fremennik ring, and then the Rancor is only a few strength worse than the amulet as well. So there's this incredible website called gearscape.net that shows you different DPS calculations based off of the areas that you choose. So this right here shows me a crystal, a helm, and a Soul Reaper axe, and my DPS is 27 with the melee relic checked right here. So if I swap Fremennik for, say, Morytania, it automatically updates itself to the best gear available in the region. And the DPS really isn't that much different, but in Morytania, it's still 26. But in Morytania, I have the chance to, let me upgrade this to, I can have a chance to get a Scythe, which is obviously way more DPS. I don't want to go too crazy on the raid regions, so I'm going to try and keep this conservative and just stick with the Soul Reaper axe. But this is looking pretty juicy. Interestingly enough, the crystal, if I swap this out to, say, Asgarnia, even with Torva available, I only have the helmet and I still keep the 2 crystal pieces. So this is one of the reasons why I think Tirannwyn is looking incredibly strong. And it's a lot easier to just farm the gauntlet, I think, than to farm necks. And speaking of Fremennik, the only new one here is that the Magus ring will just drop off of Duke. I can't imagine too many people are going to go for this because it's the mage ring that drops off of Duke, which you'll want melee to kill. And Duke is also going to be one of the most annoying bosses to kill because of the prep phase, having to make those 2 potions. Leagues doesn't really speed that up in any way. So I imagine most people will just try and kill a few Duke for some easy points, but probably won't farm it out for all of the items. The desert had the similar thing. We didn't get too much new other than the Venator ring will drop off Leviathan. The Venator ring is fine, but I think if you're going ranged or mage, you should still go to Fremnik because that ring is so much better. 15 range strength compared to the Venator ring's 2 range strength. It's just not even close. But then, of course, you can also get the full Soul Reaper axe in Leviathan and the other 2 Scythe and Twisted Bow from Tombs of Amasket as well. So Morytania, also known as the region that just keeps on winning. Morytania was already like an S tier region, and now it's just like an S++ region. The Avernic Defender will just drop from TOB instead of needing Asgarnia to go with it. This does knock down Asgarnia a little bit of a peg because that was a decent reason to choose Asgarnia before, was getting a defender. But now that you can just get it from Tob and it's the Biss, then Asgarnia goes down a little bit because of that. The other biggest thing is that the Rancor will drop off of Araxor. So not needing a Zenite from Kandarin for an Amulet of Torture to make the Rancor is just another slight against Kandarin, which is just hilarious. And this, of course, puts the Rancor into pretty close contention with the Amulet of the Monarchs from the Fremnik. So if you're a melee build, I think Morytania and Varlamore are looking real appealing. If you don't want to do Varlamore, you can still, of course, do Fremnik. And if you don't want to do a raids region, you can make it work too. Before this update, I was considering just doing Varlamore and Tirannwyn and Fremnik and not even having a raids region and just get my dragon trophy that way without having to raid. But I think Morytania has so many points. Last year I did Morytania and I didn't do a ton of Theater of Blood. I did enough to get a few purples, but I still got Dragon Trophy without having to farm out a Scythe or anything like that. But now that Theater of Blood gives you Shadow and Twisted Bow and a whole Avernic Defender, Tob's looking like the best raid, especially if you get the Grimoire that they talked about yesterday. You don't really need the Prayer Scrolls from Chambers. You also get the Guardian's Boots off of Grotesque Guardians. They're not the biggest deal in the world, but they're pretty tanky boots. Another thing that's just great about Morytania, if you're melee, is Blood Fury. I was able to do a lot of Nex solo last year because I had a Blood Fury and the Soul Stealer Relic and a Fang and Banker's Note, which gave me unlimited food. That was overkill. The Blood Fury just helps out a ton. And with my region, with Varlamore, and I get the healing gloves, then Blood Fury plus that will be amazing. So it even makes me doubly think I don't really think I need the Fremnik amulet. So Morytania just keeps on winning. Kourend is also an amazing winner in all this. From the Alchemical Hydra, you can get the Ferocious Gloves as well as the Dragon Hunter Lance. And those are such good items, especially for killing Hydra with more, as well as doing Chambers of Zarek. You'll have a solid melee weapon to do the melee hand on for Ulm. And then the other big one is if you get a Kodai, you get to keep the wand itself. You don't have to worry about taking desert as a region to farm out the wand. Another detail they added about Kourend was that you now have a chance to loot a Dragon Hosta, the full thing, from the Brimstone chest. So there's just another slight towards Kandarin, since you needed Kandarin to make a Hosta historically to talk to Odo at the Barbarian training. So Kourend was also a big winner in all this. So the Wilderness didn't have any updates. Everything that needs to be used in the Wilderness is also just self-contained in the Wilderness, which finally brings us back to our first region, Misthalin. The biggest change here was that Tormented Demons will now just drop the Synapse, and you can change the Synapse into any weapon you want using just one Synapse to go between the Emberlight or the Scorching Bow or the Staff. The Emberlight is really nice because it's pretty much best in slot at like Cerberus, also Biss at Abyssal Sire. And Sire's kind of cool because you get so many points from it and it's in a region that everyone has access to. So like last year, for example, 80 points for defeating it once. And then you also get another 80 points for if you get any unsired and get the item. And of course, I think there's one, defeat the combat achievements for Abyssal Sire. I know one of them is Venge, but that one is auto-completed. And those combat achievements are all very easy. So that's another free 200 points at Sire. This is a lot of Sire to do, so I probably wouldn't be doing more than like 50 kills because Sire takes a long time, but you get the idea. Having a Biss weapon there will be really nice too from Emberlights. The one issue I can think of that you might run into is if everybody has access to that area, it might get pretty crowded. So we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. And that does it for day 5. Let me know if you guys are changing any of your regions because of this information. Subscribe if you want to see more. I'm going to be making a lot of Leagues videos. I'm going to do my whole Journey to Dragon trophy. I'll answer every comment you guys leave down and talk strategy. My favorite part about Leagues is just talking strategy and theory crafting of what to do. So we'll see you guys in the next one.